Known as the movie capital of the world, bringing films to audiences that provide entertainment and at times thought-provoking drama, Hollywood recently hosted a different kind of media through a unique forum broadcast live worldwide on Supreme Master Television on Saturday, July 26, 2008. The Climate Change International Conference was held at the Pacific Design Center in West Hollywood, California, USA. Organized by the Supreme Master Ching Hai International Association, it was a conference that brought together green Hollywood celebrities and notable speakers. Co-hosted by Emmy Award-winning television journalist and vegan Jane Velez Mitchell, the event was informative and the subject matter highly relevant. 3 panels were conducted, each with a different theme: the urgent scientific facts of the climate crisis, its spiritual perspectives, and the transformational role of the media. Invited as a special guest speaker, Supreme Master Ching Hai graciously attended via live video conference to answer questions from the panelists as well as the audience. We now invite you to join us for the rebroadcast of the Climate Change International Conference.
My question is, why is it that Al Gore never talks about vegetarianism or veganism?
I can't answer for Al Gore. I mean, I can just speak for myself and for the facts, and the facts, as we have already discussed, are that if you do go vegetarian, you will help to save the planet.
But he has all these websites, and I've contacted those websites, and I say, why are you talking about light bulbs and transportation when the biggest cause of global warming, according to the United Nations, is meat production? And you know what they say? We don't want to go there. I have that as a quote. I called as a journalist.
Could you give us your perspective on the meat industry, please? What is its impact on our present situation?
Sure. I wanted to talk about the connections more generally also between food and climate change. And I want to start off by briefly highlighting 2 conditions of our world today that I think are important to keep in mind. One is agriculture, both the production of plants and animals, is the single largest human land use out there on the planet. Agriculture contributions to greenhouse gases is quite enormous, as you were saying. In terms of carbon dioxide, 21 to 25% of anthropogenic human-made emissions are from agriculture, about 60% of methane from agriculture, and 65 to 80% of nitrous oxides. And as Dr. Singh was saying, methane is 30 times more potent, approximately, than carbon dioxide, and nitrous oxides is 200 times more potent per molecular weight than carbon dioxide. So these ones matter too. We need to address all of them. And then the other thing I want to highlight is the extreme inequalities in the world today that we have. We have a handful of billionaires own more wealth or as much wealth as the 48 poorest countries in the world, and that's about 3 billion people, about half the world's population. This kind of inequality in wealth also translates into food access. And so we have between 800 million and now maybe 1 billion or more people without adequate access to food on this planet. That's close to 1/6 of the population. We've seen food riots around the world in various countries as a manifestation of this inequality. And the world economic system basically doesn't work for those people who can't afford to purchase food. So what I mean by this is that we basically have enough food. We do have enough food to feed everyone on the planet, but we're not doing so. Millions of people have inadequate diets. So I want to highlight those 2 propositions and then talk from there. Basically, as we've been saying, meat really matters. The Agricultural Sustainability Institute here at UC Davis recently had an international conference looking at the effects of, or the low-carbon diet, as we might call it, trying to move diets towards lesser climate change impacts. And in the report coming out of the workshop, note this is academics who typically highlight uncertainty. The issue of plant protein versus animal protein is not a high priority for new research, as existing research has already overwhelmingly demonstrated that plant proteins are almost always environmentally superior to protein from livestock from the perspective of energy intensity and greenhouse gas emissions. So we have about 56 billion animals on the planet that are slaughtered annually. They consume about 80% of the world's soybean crop and about 50% of the world's corn crop. It's quite astounding when you look at it that way. Livestock's production contribution to greenhouse gases is greater than the transportation sector. That's quite amazing as well, in that we usually think of driving and flying when we think of reducing our own emissions, or alternatives to driving and flying, like bikes and so forth. So why is this the case? I just want to go back to the food chain that's feeding the animals. First, of course, fossil fuel inputs are used in the growing of the feed. So that means we're turning natural gas into synthetic fertilizer. It's a very energy-intensive process. We burn gas to do that. Modern pesticides, very similar thing. Also, we transport that grain using fossil fuels to feed the animals, since we have a disconnect now between concentrated animal feedlot operations and the feeding systems. And the third, though, is the most important, and that is whenever an organism eats food, it gets energy from that and also turns it into body mass. But during that conversion, you lose about 90% of the energy in that food. Yeah, it's rough. So as Howard was saying, we have a situation in which it takes about 16 pounds of grain in order to make 1 pound of meat. In addition to that, of course, we've highlighted the methane contribution. That is, livestock contribute a great deal to other greenhouse gases, not just carbon dioxide. Animal agriculture is responsible for about 37% of all anthropogenic methane emissions and about 65% of all nitrous oxides emissions. That's animal agriculture alone. And of course, we have a great deal of energy going into heating and cooling concentrated animal feedlot operations, and we also have a vast amount of energy that it takes to keep the meat cold once you slaughter it and move it to the consumer. All of that is very energy intensive and therefore emits greenhouse gases. So in the scientific community now, people are embracing what's called life cycle analyses to look at all of the various inputs and the impacts that they have when you take something from the farm all the way to having it at your fork. So when you do that and you look at a kilogram of beef, the equivalent of 36 kilograms of carbon dioxide are emitted for that. If we look at pork, it's about 6 kilograms, so it's 6 times more efficient. But if we look at dry peas or beans, it's about 0.6. So we look at that another way. Dry beans, peas, adequate source of protein per kilogram are about 60 times more efficient in terms of greenhouse gas emissions than a kilogram of beef. Quite striking. So basically, plant-based diets are far more sustainable than diets based on grain-fed meat. Reducing our consumption of industrial-produced meat will greatly reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases. And in addition to that, we also face challenges in terms of plant-based agriculture. It's not just animal-based. We have to deal with the fact that most of our plant-based agriculture relies on fossil fuels, both for mechanized inputs and also for fertilizer. So we need to move away from this, of course, looking at the non-renewableness of fossil fuels. We have to increase the use of legumes, that would be clovers and alfalfas, in order to make up for the nitrogen that we'll lose through the synthetic nitrogen that we won't be able to use in the future. And also we need to actually integrate livestock in a synergistic way in which livestock wastes, as they've been used historically, are actually used as fertilizers on farms to recouple those cycles. And then what I do want to say also is that just reducing meat and also increasing the sustainability of agriculture is not necessarily going to address the current food crisis. so that even if we take all the grain, or if we free up all the grain from all the meat that we eat, it won't solve the hunger problem because it's not caused by lack of food. It's caused by lack of access to food because of lack of purchasing power of the poor. So we need to address its root, which is poverty. And so I see the following as essential. We have to understand that our current economy actually concentrates power in the hands of the wealthy, and as Howard was saying, they have undue influence over our politicians. We also have to free ourselves of the ideology that free markets are going to solve our problems, and instead see that the rules of the market, we actually have to set them by society to serve social goals. So in terms of solving the food crisis, we can talk about that at great length, but we basically need to allow developing countries to pursue food security policies rather than being opened up to our subsidized grains. And also we have to empower the rural poor, give them access to land and the means to produce. A deeper democracy is basically what I'm talking about. So basically, to conclude, in the face of global warming and its quickening pace, we need to make wide-sweeping changes, I would say, and fast. In the industrialized world, these changes include both changes in our diets, also in our transportation habits, and the design of the place we live in terms of houses and cities. If we feel any sense of obligation to future generations and also to other people on the planet and to other organisms, I think we should dramatically reduce our meat consumption. Our diet should be primarily plant-based. But it's not just necessarily up to us, it's also up to us to influence policy. So we need to make the days of emitting greenhouse gas emissions with impunity, we have to end that, basically. We need regulations, we need incentives, a combination of those, and green taxes that will tax those most environmentally damaging activities. Before I end, I was going to pose a question to Supreme Master Ching Hai, and that is, we've heard a lot about industrialized meat production. We've, I'd say, made a good case in terms of going vegetarian, especially in industrialized countries. But there's also charges of neocolonialism when the first world tells the third world what to do, or the developing countries. So what do you think about vegetarianism and herding cultures, say the Fulani or the Bedouin, and charges of neocolonialism?
Thank you, Professor God. Yes, thank you for bringing this up. You see, anything natural, it should be good. Otherwise, of course, it's not good. But once our planet social structure is stabilized and the economy is in full bloom everywhere, due to vegetarian diet and the blessing of heaven and the new technology, etc., then I think the herding practice will also be absorbed naturally, as they are just a small percentage anyway, compared to the organized meat industry as a whole. We, of course, should spread out the great benefit of veganism and elevate our spiritual level to an extent so that all humans will understand that only a noble, compassionate way of life, such as vegetarian lifestyle, is truly sustainable and benefit human, as we are the crown of the creation. And by the way, Jane, you have forgotten, Mr. Al Gore has made a surprise visit to a meeting in Austin, Texas, on the 19th of July. He was speaking to the internet-savvy political activists there as a Net Root Nations conference. When one journalist asked him about a vegetarian diet, he said it is true that vegetarian diet is good for people's health and can save the planet. So he did say something, maybe not on the web, but he did say elsewhere.
Excellent. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I think he also began vegetarian diet already. I mean, not completely, but maybe half or two-thirds already vegetarian. It's not that easy for many people, I have to say, because these are new to them. And they probably think, what? Without meat, how am I going to live? They forgot the cow and the elephant. They are so big and they live only on grass and simple leaves even.
Thank you very much, Master and Professor. We'd like to open the floor again to some questions from the audience.
My name is Denise Martin, and I work for Starlight Starbright Children's Foundation. As you may know, we work with seriously ill children, and my concern is always for the welfare of the vulnerable and the young around the world. As this is a humanitarian question, my question is to Supreme Master Ching Hai. Given the threat we all face, how can we bring to public awareness the plight children face, particularly in relationship to diet and environment?
Miss Martin, how are you? Thanks for the good work that you've been doing for these unfortunate children. Good question, good question. You see, Miss Martin, according to all the scientific and medical evidences, most sickness come from meat eating. It's avoidable if we follow wholesome diet of plant-based food. If the parents are not well, then the children born will also be affected, as has been proven through scientific and medical research. Even before they come to the world already, the children, many have been affected by the unwellness, by the disease of the parents. On the SupremeMasterTV.com, there are collected facts for anyone to be informed about the detrimental effect of meat diet to adults and children and fetus even, unborn children even. So we could print them out and give it to anyone who are interested in this or who are asking such a question concerning the fetus and the babies who are born sick or sick from a genetic disorder. You could print them all out and tell them to log onto the above website themselves also for updated truths about our diet's influence on our life and on the world. All our website information, show, advertisement, they're all free of charge. You are free to download any of them and use them in any way that benefit others. Thank you so much, Miss Martin. And please send my love to all the children.
Very wise information. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nick Heiming, and I'd like to thank the Supreme Master for all the work she's done for disaster victims over the past.
Welcome.
I myself have volunteered after the tsunami and the Hurricane Katrina and the earthquake down in Peru, and it's that has led me to come and represent the Green Institute for Village Empowerment, which is giveforthefuture.org. And my question is for Mr. Galt. If we're going to be able to deal with a major threat to the global food supply, people are going to have to learn how to grow their own food again. There are many new techniques for hydroponic growing and other things people can do even in an apartment. My question is, how can we spread the word to teach people how to grow their own food, even if they live in cities or apartment buildings?
The question of growing our own food, I think we've seen in a lot of areas, right? We've seen a rebirth of urban agriculture, certainly, and also, in addition to not just growing our own food, but to relocalizing the food system, and that is to start to recognize that farmers that are near us can actually produce food just as well as we can get it from the grocery store. And so kind of relocalizing the food system has gotten a major push, and for very good reason. It has a number of benefits. In terms of getting information out there in terms of how to grow our own food, I think there's a huge amount of skill involved in growing food, from seed saving to seed selection to all sorts of other things. But now we're actually able to share information like we never have been able to before with the internet. Just by watching a video on the internet, you're not going to figure out how to grow food. But in addition to having those kind of resources online, we also have, I would say, a retooling, if you will, of the university system to start to recognize the number of challenges that we're facing as a society, and to start new programs in sustainable agriculture that'll actually teach students how to become organic farmers or such. And so at UC Davis, we're starting a new agriculture and food system sustainability major in order to teach students not just about production agriculture side, but also food system and social issues as well. So I think we'll see our institutions, universities start to equip students better in terms of growing their own food, in terms of becoming part of a relocalized food system. But also we need to still depend on farmers. I would say that they have a huge amount of knowledge and expertise, and so we'll create reciprocal relationships rather than farmers always having low prices and consumers always facing higher prices. So we need to create those relationships as well and keep farmers around.
Thank you, Professor. Our next question is directed to Master.
I want to say thank you very much for her amazing work. I'm Janice Belson. I'm the founder and director of Medicines Global, and I have the incredible opportunity of working with a lot of at-risk youth here, getting them to talk to each other. My organization is called Medicines Global. You can read about us at medicinesglobal.org. And one of the key points in our Outdoor Youth Ambassador program is diet, nutrition. And my question really is, it's clear that we must encourage school cafeterias to help our youth enjoy a vegetarian diet. The kids grow up eating potato chips and Coca-Cola, and they have such a very limited idea about what we're talking about. How can we encourage those that actually supply the food to our children to help us have more vegetarian choices? Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you. Thank you for concerning about the health and happiness of the children. Thanks for your good heart. It has not been very widespread, the vegetarian diet, I have to say. Even up to now, many people who are vegetarian who has to be like a closet vegetarian for fear of being ridiculed and mockery. Now, I have appealed to all of the vegetarian and vegans people to come out and try to help as much as they can, because you are the heroes of the planet. There is no time anymore to hide or to worry about what people think about us anymore. We are good. We are good. We are noble. We have to spread the news for everybody to join the vegetarian circle in order to save the planet. Janice, I think you can talk to them and write to them and present to them with all the scientific and medical facts about the harmful effects of meat-based diet and the enormous benefit of vegetarian vegan diet. You tell the school to choose wisely as well with the same facts above, and pray that we change. On the SupremeMasterTV.com, you can have all the facts you need up to date about the harmful effect of meat. We have even all the scientists' name and all the medical evidence of the meat diet that harm people and gives so enormous sickness. Now, in Slovenia, even after my visit in Slovenia, some of the Waldorf schools provide now only vegetarian meals, and other schools bring their own meal. They don't cater meat anymore. So you can suggest the same to the school board of directors. Give the parents also the info, the sheets that you have printed out from anywhere on the internet or from our freemastertv.com about the harmful meat diet and the beneficial vegetarian diet. Good luck and blessed be your noble endeavor. Janice.
Some excellent suggestions. Thank you, Supreme Master.
Thanks to the panelists for being here, and thank you, Supreme Master Ching Hai, for spreading your love and action around the world. I would like to ask about the methane gas trapped under the permafrost layer. Could Supreme Master Ching Hai and Dr. Singh elaborate about what research is saying and the risk to human health? Thank you.
Dr. Singh have told you a lot already, and I ask his permission to answer your question. Roughly speaking, the research show that methane gas can cause headaches. I'm not talking about global warming and trapping heat and all that yet. Now, the methane gas can cause headaches, respiratory system, heart malfunctions, and in more concentrated dose, death by suffocation. It is similar to carbon monoxide poisoning. It is 23 times more deadly than CO2. And livestock produce up to almost 40% of global methane gas. Also accounted for 65% of global nitrous oxide, which is 310 times more lethal, more deadly than CO2, carbon dioxide. And they remain many long years in the atmosphere. And methane gas causes global warming to accelerate, and in turn, the warmed up ocean and permafrost will also release more and more methane gas, and also even hydrogen sulfide, which is credited with wiping out the 90% plus living creatures in our Earth history in the past. So it's not just methane we are worried about. It's so many gases from the ocean. And depends on the concentration dose. Just the hydrogen sulfide alone can cause irritation of different body organs, eyes, nose, throat, bronchial constriction, spontaneous abortion, impaired bodily functions, headaches, dizziness, vomiting, coughing, difficult breathing, eye damage, shock, coma, and death, etc. If concentrate dose is high enough, like, for example, 1,000 parts per million, ppm, then even one single inhalation causes immediately breathing stop and collapse. So there was some reports about animal farms in Minnesota which produce also hydrogen sulfide that causes people in the vicinity to vomit so much that they had to flee their own homes. And you can look for an article on July 17, 2008 on the Environmental News Network. And another incident on North Carolina in which residents from 26 counties are forced to stay indoor as the air quality was so poor and filled with pollutant, including highly toxic gas hydrogen sulfide from animals. So this article you can find also on the News and Observer, dated June 19, 2008. These are the recent events, and probably much more before. I'm sure these are not the single incidents concerning hydrogen sulfide produced by livestock. So other articles by the Telegraph on December 9, 2007 on the Earth Times also reported cases of deaths in other countries due to methane and hydrogen sulfide gases. I'm sure there are more. If we have time to do research on this subject, I'm sure you have more instruments to do this. The United Nations has recently offered a website concerning these matters. Maybe you could find more info there.
I'm sure we can, yes.
But that's scary enough already, I think.
Okay, thank you, Supreme Master.
You're welcome, love.
We have another question here from fellow Canadian, Florence Etienne.
Welcome.
Bonjour, Maître. I'm Florence Etienne. I'm a linguist, and I'm so pleased to be here. And I want to thank you so much for teaching us the one main language, the language of love.
Yeah.
My question is for you. What percentage of the American people would be necessary to make a major change in climate change and in world hunger?
Good question, madam. Good question. Yes, I'm sure you must have been very concerned in order to think of this question. In all my calculation and insight and humble opinion, in the USA, if we want to make a truly real contribution to halt global warming, then 70% of the population of America should be vegetarian. I hope they will be. The trend is growing, madam. The trend is growing. I hope we will reach 70% pretty soon before the 3 years and 4 months is up. And the more people join vegetarian, the more time we gain to be able to deal with the global warming. And also, vegetarian will stop world hunger as well. You know that.
Supreme Master, I think that wraps up our questions for this panel. Thank you so much, Supreme Master Ching Hai, for your wisdom. Thank you so much, our amazing panel, for their wisdom. We have another extraordinary panel for you on spirituality, why all life is sacred.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you. It's not just wisdom, Jane. It's information. Information that is available nowadays on the internet. Now, I have appealed to all of the vegetarian and vegans people to come out and try to help as much as they can, because you are the heroes of the planet. There is no time anymore to hide or to worry about what people think about us anymore. We are good. We are good. We are noble. We have to spread the news for everybody to join the vegetarian circle in order to save the planet.
I'm investigative journalist and proud vegan Jane Velez Mitchell, and we are talking about how to save the world. People from all around the world are watching this broadcast, not just on the internet, but on satellite television, more than 14 satellites downloading this around the globe. So you in the audience and you at home, we are changing the world today. We have had amazing discussions so far, and it continues. Now we have a panel about spirituality and diet, and those two things are very, very linked. If you're talking about spirituality, but you're eating fast food and you're eating burgers, something is wrong. We're going to talk about why all life is sacred. And of course, we are, as always, delighted to have with us Supreme Master Ching Hai, the woman who is responsible for this message being spread around the world. Thank you once again, Supreme Master.
Thank you, love. Thank you, man.
We also have an amazing panel, and I'm very, very delighted to be able to meet in person Lionel Friedberg, who is the Emmy Award-winning producer and director of A Sacred Duty, which is an amazing documentary about the horrors of animal agriculture and really horror is the word. If any of you have ever seen this documentary, it really exposes the toxic secrets and the underbelly of this industry. Also delighted to have somebody who I'm a big admirer of, Dr. Elliot Katz, who is the president of In Defense of Animals, an organization that does so much for animals and really spreads the word about a host of problems involving the animal community, whether it's factory farming, testing on animals, across the board. And finally, once again, we have Dr. Will Tuttle, who is the best-selling author of the amazing book, The World Peace Diet, Eating for Spiritual Health and Social Harmony. As I mentioned, Supreme Master Ching Hai is joining us on an international web and satellite hookup, and we are very much delighted to have Supreme Master participating in this panel discussion.
Thank you, Jay. Lionel, in your opinion, what is the role of religious organizations and their part in overcoming today's dire crisis?
Well, clearly there are many facets and aspects to this whole business of global warming and climate change. And one of the most overlooked, I think, certainly in the media and in the mainstream media we're talking about here, is the matter of ethics and morals. Asking yourself the question, is there anything morally wrong with what we're doing to our world, to our planet, to the species with whom we share it? It really comes down to that. And the fact is that when you go beyond the political arguments and the scientific questions and the engineering aspects and so on and so forth, you really have to get into the profound moral side of global warming if we're going to touch the hearts of people and make people ponder on this on the deepest level. You know, ethics are what drives so much of what we do. And our moral fiber is what lies at the heart of so much of our decision making. If we don't exercise the right decisions in that aspect, what's going to happen? We might get more gas mileage out of an engine, but if we let the polar bears go extinct, what's the point of that? I think we've failed in our mission, and what we'll be left with is a morally bereft and depleted world. And I don't think any of us really want that. So religion, I think, plays a very large role in addressing these issues. I made a film called The Sacred Duty, which was produced for an organization called Jewish Vegetarians of North America. They underwrote the film, JVNA for short. And it dealt with all the aspects that we've been discussing here today, from the agricultural side, from the scientific side, from global warming, carbon dioxide, you name it, everything. But at the end of the movie, we addressed in no uncertain terms that really what it comes down to is what are we doing to those beings with whom we share this world with? And we're treating them pretty awfully. It pulled no punches in showing that. It turned a lot of people away from the film because they didn't want to know about this. They didn't want to deal with that sequence. And so I had to put a menu up front at the beginning of the DVD to allow people to jump over that segment if they wanted to. I didn't want to do that, but I was made to do that because people say, oh, I can't show this to kids and I can't show this to my mom-in-law and whatever else. But we have to start thinking about it on that level. You know, we had hoped that with this movie, which was made by a Jewish organization, but it addresses universal issues. It doesn't specifically address Jewish questions. It was made by a Jewish organization, but it looks at what does the Bible have to say? What do the great books of the Bible have to say? The 5 books of Moses. It incorporated texts and quotations from that in order to touch people, because a lot of people go to synagogues and temples and churches and mosques and whatever else, and this resonates with them. And so the film had this religious theme running through it in the hope that we would reach a very large audience, not only in the Bible Belt, but everywhere. And what we had hoped was that established religion, be it Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or Judaism or Rosicrucianism or whatever, would eventually get together and come to a common platform and start addressing the issues of climate change, of global warming, and of our relationship to ourselves because of the health issues involved, and to the animals that we are abusing so horrifically in labs and on factory farms and slaughterhouses. I don't have to go into details. You all know what goes on. But we didn't reach enough people in the religious community. The religious community has, unfortunately, been very reticent to get together and to address these issues on a common platform. And I still, to this day, am wondering what that may all be about, why there is such apathy. I do think that in about 100 years, or maybe less from now, we'll be able to look back on this era and wonder how we allowed the Amazon rainforest to go up in smoke, how we allowed the great apes of Africa and Asia to become extinct. How did we allow the coral reefs to appear? Didn't we know what was going on? Didn't those who occupy the platforms, the religious platform, realize what was going on and speak out loudly about it? I shudder to think about what our grandchildren will say to us one day when they say to us, well, didn't you know? But of course, we do know. And I think this is a fundamental issue that should be addressed by the religious community. They are not at this point taking up the cudgels and looking at these issues. And I think we need to break through that barrier. We all know what goes on today. If you look recently at the meat recall here in Chino in California, where 143 million pounds of meat was called back from the school system and supermarkets purely because downed cows, these are cows that are too lame or ill to walk in slaughterhouses, were being brutalized, and therefore their meat was regarded as contaminated, and all this meat was pulled back. So it's not that we don't know what's going on anymore. We do. And I fail to see why we have not been able to break through this barrier of apathy. This is a question I would like to ask Supreme Master later on. Maybe she has some insight into that. It's not that we're dumb or we're not informed. We've been to the moon and back, and we've got little robotic explorers out there at the edge of the solar system. So we have the intelligence to make these moral choices and question these issues, and we're not doing it. So, with all due respect, on behalf of my co-producer of this film, Richard Schwartz, who is the president of Jewish Vegetarians of North America, I would like to use this platform today and issue a challenge to the religious community worldwide through the platform of Supreme Master Television to come together and to start thinking about these issues and to become a little more vociferous about them, a little more vocal. Bring it into the mainstream of religious thinking. Because if we're going to curb global warming and stop some of the horrors that are going on and making ourselves sick, we really need to bring it to the place where a lot of people go, and that is the pulpit. And so, with all due respect, I issue that challenge today. And I'd like to end with a question then to Supreme Master, and that is there any way that we can break through this apathy that is preventing people from taking up this issue and converting to a vegetarian diet when the facts are clear as well? We all have access to it now.
Yes. Hello, Mr. Freebell. Thanks for the honor. I thank you, first of all, for being so concerned. And you are right. I think the religious people and leaders should speak up about this subject, should be taking more of the leading position to help the public understand the great problem that we're facing and the solution to curb the global warming. But it's not going to be that easy or overnight. But I think right now, maybe we can just offer them, the public, the vegetarian diet. Even if the religious leader doesn't help us to give a hand in this, we can go all out and spread the news through internet, through flyers, through media, through television, and through word of mouth. We can offer them all the information that is very up to date now about the climate change and the solution. And right now, the only solution, the best, the fastest, and the most effective is the vegetarian diet. That is the major solution to global warming, as per scientific evidences even. I'm not even talking about the moral obligation and the karmic retribution from meat diet. But if we give enough information to the public at large, and if they care enough to forego animal food, to save the world, then their heart will have been enlarged enough to be more compassionate toward other species. And then they will understand gradually, naturally also, due to their kind living standard, that to love others is to love themselves. It will be more automatic mental attitude after the majority of the whole planet population turn to vegetarian diet. Now, once we have saved the world, we will have more time to help them to understand in a deeper level about compassion toward animals. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Supreme Master Ching Hai and Mr. Freeberg, for sharing with us. Dr. Katz, could you please share with us your thoughts on how compassionate living drives your own life purpose?
All right. If I could start off, I'd like to read 2 or 3 statements from people whose genius, sensitivity have motivated me and whose footsteps I've tried to follow, and for my organization, that's the driving force for In Defense of Animals. The first one is a statement by St. Francis of Assisi. It's not to hurt our humble brethren is our first duty to them, but to stop there is not enough. We have a higher mission to be of service to them wherever they require it. The second one is by George Bernard Shaw. The worst sin towards our fellow creatures is not to hate them, but to be indifferent to them. That's the essence of inhumanity. This statement tends to get hidden from the public. There's been art shows around the genius of Leonardo da Vinci. His artwork is fantastic, thinking futuristically of things he's created. He stated, "The time will come when men such as I will look upon the murder of animals as they now look upon the murder of men." And the statement that brings it full circle is a statement by Albert Einstein, who makes it all seem so very relative. Our task must be to free ourselves by winding our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. And that's the statement that ties together now the concern for the well-being of the planet as well as the well-being of the species that inhabit it. Us, the human species, being part of a web of life. And the statement that I'll finish with is by Emile Zola. And he states, "The fate of animals is of greater importance to me than the fear of appearing ridiculous." And that's the reason I'm here today. Take that chance. Several years ago, our organization, this is our 25th year for In Defense of Animals since I founded it. My background is as a veterinarian, so I've ministered and cared for and done everything to save lives of animals all my adult life. And the organization has been successful, very successful. We've got some groundbreaking victories. But several years ago, I realized that I was only spinning my wheels or doing Band-Aid cures that to stop cruelty and so forth, that unless the paradigm changed, the way we perceive as a species, other species, that it's time that we stop seeing them as resources, seeing them as just commodities, objects, property of things. And as long as that is the main paradigm, that we will always continue to exploit them and harm them and abuse them and not think in terms of them as compassion. And the question was raised before, why doesn't religion do more? Religion, to a great extent, has been the major factor why animals are considered down here and we are considered way up there. And that's because religions, many of them don't believe that animals have souls and we have souls. And therefore, why should we care about these beings that have no souls? And that goes back to the days of Thomas Aquinas and so forth in Western society, to looking at that and saying, why care? The man who came up with what goes on in laboratories, vivisection, Descartes. In his day, they tortured animals experimenting on them because they believed that the screaming of a dog was no different than the ticking of a clock. That animal was simply a mechanical being. No soul, no sensitivity, no intelligence. Well, we've learned differently over the years thanks to people like Jane Goodall. But these are the factors that keep the major separation. And this goes on. So several years back, I started a campaign to change the concept and the paradigm and started promoting the use of the term guardian. So for people who have animal companions, probably maybe some of you have heard already, do your best never to think of yourself as the owner of your animal companion, but as their guardian, their protector. And Mayor Prank of West Hollywood, several years back, they were about the third or fourth city in the United States that changed the term owner in their ordinance to the term guardian. And other cities include St. Louis, Missouri, Bloomington, Indiana, San Jose, San Francisco, Woodstock, New York, Amherst, Massachusetts, state of Rhode Island. And we're hoping soon to have Beverly Hills, to have it happen. We're working on that. So this is critically important. Action follows language. Concepts, what one does, the way one thinks. So as long as people like ourselves don't take the lead and don't think of animals as more than resources, property, commodity, and things, we will just be spinning our wheels. But I would like to say that because of this climate catastrophe, it has brought together people. Up until now, there has been a giant divide between animal protection, animal rights, and environmentalism and concern for the environment. And now, because of this audience is made up perhaps of people who hadn't given that much thought to the suffering of animals, maybe a little bit, but really haven't put their minds into what goes on in the factory farms and the millions of animals that are killed in the most hideous ways. As a veterinarian, I've witnessed it. Or who were raised in the most hideous ways. But now, because our earth is involved, we have another, in quotes, stake in it, spelled the other way. And on some levels, I'm pleased that this is bringing this together. I have a question to ask you, and that is your thoughts on how to change the paradigm to get people to realize that we are but one species among many, and to give much more consideration to the other species that we share the planet with. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You see, you have very good suggestions through your question that we should really change the attitude towards our animal co-inhabitants. Yes. But this will take a little time and a lot of public informing activities in order to change everyone's attitude. Every one of us can contribute our part, whatever way we can, to change the public opinions. I wrote 3 books, The Dogs in My Life, The Birds in My Life, and The Noble Wilds, in the hope that I can give as much information as possible to as many readers as possible, so that they understand and accept the fact that our magical animal kingdom has a lot to offer and has a lot in common with us. In fact, some of them are more endowed than us humans. And I have suggested to use the word our co-inhabitants in the Supreme Master TV in referring to our co-inhabitants, animals. And some people already use caretakers, a guardian, a human companion, etc., etc., instead of pet owners. It's a good sign, and I hope this trend will be more common in the future. But even if they say, okay, I'm the owner of the dog, it's just a term to refer to his companion. But if he treats the dogs well, humanly, compassionately, and lovely, then it doesn't matter. We also don't mind. As long as people mentality have to change, they have to look upon our animal co-inhabitants with all due respect and understanding. The best would be that they can communicate with the animals. But you see, at least if we have domestic animals, we should love and respect them as family members and give them names and comforts and the way we would like to be treated. My books also to let people know that we can really communicate with animals, just like the way we can communicate with our family members or friends. Therefore, I even suggest with the Supreme Master Television to list all the animals, psychics, the animals communicators on the television website and the television screen. People can refer to it and really can test it out. They can call any of these animals, communicators or psychics, and talk to them about their animals' feeling and wants and habits. You can test them even. Suppose these animal psychics never know where you live and never know what your dogs look like even. You just give them the name of your dog. And then he will tell, or the animal communicators, or you call it psychics, can immediately tell you the intimate details about your dog. Then you know that he really knows. And then you can ask them further question about what your dogs want, and is there any question from the dog's part or anything that the dogs request from the companion, the human caretaker. So nowadays, there's no excuse anymore to treat animals the way the majority of us used to do. So it is good that we have a television and good that we list all these communicators. And it's a little good of me to write these books to inform people about what I know about animals through my communication and interaction with them, internally as well as externally. I think everybody should begin to realize that animals really have soul, and they're just like us. They're just like us. They're just different shape, just like different flowers. Some big, some small flowers, they're all flowers. And living beings, some big, some small, some 2 legs, some 2 wings, they're all living beings like us. Thank you, sir, for bringing this up and giving me a chance to explain. And God bless you.
Thank you.
I've had the great pleasure of reading Supreme Master's books about animals, and they really are beautiful and spiritual, and they're international bestsellers, which is always a good thing because she, again, is spreading the word about the relationship between people and animals around the world. And of course, this is really all about evolution. When we become incapable of killing a pig or killing a dog, essentially, we're going to be incapable of murdering each other and waging war.
That's
so
right.
How do we evolve to that next level?
All right, love. Well, we just have to do it one step at a time. Actually, global warming is a tragedy. But in a way, it has a little positive effect in that people are united together to fight global warming. That's number one. And number two, people are getting more awareness about our co-inhabitants and how we should treat them. So I think that's already half of the next level.
Absolutely.
And the next we will go further and further, yeah, as we work along.
Dr. Tuttle, would you like to weigh on the evolution aspect of this spirituality crisis?
Yes. What I've discovered in my research into this for a long time is that all of us have been born into a culture that has an underlying hidden core that it is taboo for us to discuss. And it's taboo for us to discuss it as a culture because we, at a deep level, feel a lot of remorse and grief over the massive amount of routine brutality that we mete out towards animals for food routinely every day in this culture, for food and also for entertainment and for research. And so it's taboo to talk about this, and I think that's one of the main reasons this conference is so valuable, is that we're actually talking about what is taboo. And there's always this sense in talking about a taboo subject, there's just sort of this quality of, oh no, don't talk about it. But there's also an aspect of, oh wow, this is powerful to talk about, you know, and it's the very hidden shadow at the core of our culture, I believe. And what this core is fundamentally is a mentality of reductionism that we're taught from the time basically we leave our mother's womb and come into this world, and we begin to start eating the foods that we're forced to eat in this culture. After we lose our mother's breast, we're given the flesh and secretions of animals that have been brutalized. And so we're taught from an early age to reduce beings to things, to mere commodities. So it's a mentality of commodification of life. It's a mentality of reductionism. It's also a mentality of exclusion, because we learn early on to exclude certain beings from the sphere of our compassion. And when we do that, we're automatically able to commit violence towards them, because we say something like, well, they just were put here for us to use, or they don't have a soul. And every institution in our culture cooperates in basically ritually injecting this mentality into each and every one of us from the time we're born. The institution of our family, the institution of religion, the institution of education, the institution of the media, government, law, every institution in any culture all work together to basically let that culture reproduce itself, whatever that culture is, whether it's destructive and violent, or whether it's very, wise and benevolent. The institutions in that culture naturally work that way. And so what I realized is that we've all been basically forced into participating in daily rituals of violence that are based on reductionism, commodification, exploitation, exclusion, and fundamentally, I think even deeper than that, of disconnectedness, that we learn early on to disconnect the reality that's on our plate every breakfast, lunch, and dinner from the reality that it actually took to get it onto our plate. So we learn early on through practice the art of disconnecting, and we become masters by the time we're 10 or 12 or 15 years old of the art of disconnecting. And so we can be devastating the rainforest, cutting them all down, destroying them, and we just disconnect and say, well, it's not really happening. And the oceans are being destroyed, and we disconnect from that. And so I think at the core of this whole fundamental cultural taboo that we're talking about here today is a mentality that our culture yearns at its very soul and core to transcend, to evolve out of. I think that we know at a deep level that our purpose on this planet is to grow and to awaken and to be living blessings in the world, that we're here literally to bless the world and to discover our own unique way of being that blessing. And so this, I think, is really the challenge that we're faced as a culture, and why the greatest thing anyone can do is to become a vegan, because being a vegan is simply taking responsibility for the ripples that radiate from my life into the world, and it's a mentality of radical inclusion. It's saying I am going to include all living beings within the sphere of my compassion. And so it's fundamentally an extremely healing and life-affirming attitude, but it's not more than an attitude, it's actually living it. You can't be a vegan in theory only. It's practical. And that's why I love it so much, is that it's something we actually live and do. And I think on the outside, most people think of veganism as like you're saying no all the time, right? You say, oh, no, sorry, I don't eat this, I don't eat ice cream, I don't eat eggs, I don't eat cheese, and no. And people go, oh man, you're really negative, you're just saying no to this and no to that. You won't go to the zoo, you won't. But actually, I think it's really important to remember that attitude that seems negative of saying no actually rides on a huge yes, a yes to kindness and compassion and sustainability and freedom and peace and blessing and justice to all living beings. And it's out of that concern that we're basically following a life where we show kindness and compassion to other living beings by refusing to pay our brothers and sisters to do the heartless and brutalizing and demeaning work of killing them. And Martin Luther King said that violence anywhere hurts everyone everywhere. We are all connected. And so I think it's important to remember that if I take out my wallet and I start paying someone to confine a cow or a chicken or to brutalize these animals for food in some way, that I'm actually the one that's responsible for that. I'm paying them to do work that I would never want to do myself. And so underlying this, I think, is really an incredibly positive message that we can transform our culture. In the World Peace Diet, one of the things that early on in the book I talk about is that the last revolution that this culture ever experienced was about between 8 and 10,000 years ago, and I call it the herding revolution, where we basically, actually it started in the country that is now Iraq, started to own animals. The first time people started owning animals, seeing them merely as property. That was the fundamental reduction. And with that came everything else. We started owning human beings. Slavery happened. We started having this rich elite that emerged. And they owned the capital. Capital means head, as in head of livestock. So the first capitalism was 10,000 years ago with this wealthy elite that emerged that owned the capital. They wanted more land. They wanted more capital. The fastest way to get rich quick back then was to steal, was actually to go to war and fight against other capitalists to steal their livestock or to win their livestock by defeating them in battle. The very first word for war in this planet that we know of is the old Sanskrit word gavya, which means simply the desire for more cattle. That was the first word for war, and people who lost, basically their livestock became the property of the ones who won, and the men became slaves, the women became concubines, and it was really a brutal time, and it brought out the worst in people. The men had to become hard and tough and brutal and disconnected from their feelings. Women became reduced to mere property that were bought and sold like chattel property. If you look at the very first writings that we have, the ancient Epic of Gilgamesh, the old Sumerian writings, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Old Testament writings, the first ones, you see by the time the historic period emerged 3,000 years ago, the whole thing is established. There's slavery, and there's women are property, and nature, wildlife, has also been reduced to being the status of mere pests. They maybe will interfere with our livestock, so we want to get rid of them. And whoever owned the most capital, the most sheep and goats and cows, they were the ones who controlled society. They controlled all the institutions. They controlled religion and education. And is it any different today? I mean, why is it that it is still today that making war is the most profitable thing for the wealthy elite? Because we're still eating the same food. At the end of the day, we go home and we eat the flesh of animals that have been brutalized, and we eat the secretions of the same animals that have been brutalized. And so we keep the same institutions in place, and that's the reason we've had so much trouble making any significant progress in this world, and all these efforts for justice and sustainability, because we're still eating the same food. We're still fundamentally reinforcing within ourselves the idea that might makes right, the idea that we can exclude other living beings from the sphere of our compassion, and the idea that war is a good way to make money. And this is underlying this culture. This is the living fury at the core of our culture that no one can look at. It's taboo to talk about this. So once we start to see it, then we get the understanding of the big picture of our culture. Then we realize why veganism is so essential, why it's the most powerful thing anyone can do to bless our world, and why there's nothing more benevolent and more sacred and noble, I think, that anyone can do than to take on the task of spreading this message of veganism. Because at the very core of veganism, the other thing is the domination of the feminine. These animals that are most brutalized in this whole system are female animals. On dairy farms, on factory farms for pigs, chickens, cows, fish, all of this stuff, basically it's the female animals and the female reproductive cycles that are mercilessly dominated. And so we would never be able to do this to these females if we hadn't disconnected from our own innate wisdom and sensitivity that naturally knows that the most sacred parts of our lives, the most sacred things in nature are mothers giving birth to babies, caring for those babies, nursing those babies, nesting. This is something we should have a sense of honor and respect for. And yet dairy farms and all these places, the females are confined, their babies are stolen, we take away their products. And so it not only does it harm them, but it harms us. The ancient spiritual teachings of all the traditions emphasize when you harm someone else, you harm yourself more than you harm them. That whatever we would want most for ourselves, we should give to others. So if I want freedom and peace and joy and love for myself, I'm called to give that to others. If I give to others misery and enslavement and domination, then we end up being dominated. That's why we find more and more our culture, we are becoming enslaved, is because we are enslaving others. If we want to be free, we have to free others. And this is the teaching of liberation that I think we all know at the core of our being. I remember growing up in Concord, Massachusetts, and I just ate the food, massive amounts of meat, dairy, and eggs. And I remember when I was about 8 years old, I said to my mother, "So, is this what everybody eats?" And she said, yeah, this is what everybody eats. And then she said, well, there are vegetarians. And, you know, and she said it like, but don't worry, you'll never meet one. They live on another planet. You know, they're like far away, and, you know, don't worry. And I remember I grew up, and when I was about 12 or 13 years old, I went to this dairy farm. I went away to a summer camp in Vermont, and it was affiliated with a dairy farm that was organic, and this was like in the mid-60s, I guess, or something. And it was so interesting because this is the kind of place you think that nothing but good can come from, right? A Vermont organic dairy farm. And I remember we went down and we were all taught to catch our own chicken and to put the chicken down on this board on the ground and then to put her head between the two nails. And then in your other hand, you had your axe and you just cut her head off and she'd run around spouting blood. And then when she, expired, we would take her body and we'd put it through the hot water and we would eat the chicken. And I remember as a kid of maybe 12 or 13, I had no problem with that. I had been well indoctrinated. I had gone through 12 or 13 years of intense indoctrination 3 times a day, and I knew, as a matter of fact, that a chicken is just a chicken. It has no soul, and it was put here by God for us to use, and if I didn't eat this chicken or this meat, I would die within 24 hours of a protein deficiency. I'd be dead. So you just have to do it. It's set up like that. And I remember a little later, we did the same thing to a cow. A cow wasn't producing enough milk. And we were brought down to this organic dairy, and we shot the cow in the head 3 times with a rifle, and she fell to the ground, and he cut her head off, and the blood was everywhere, and he wiped his brow very calmly and said, you have to do that. You have to cut those arteries while the heart is still beating, otherwise the flesh would be disgusting. We humans would never want to eat it because we don't like soggy flesh. And so underlying and behind the curtain of our culture, there is a massive amount of killing. 75 million animals a day, just in the United States alone, are being slaughtered for food. These are numbers that are mind-boggling. And that's the background of this culture. And unless we begin to look behind the curtain of our denial and come to terms with this violence, not only to the human beings who have to do this kind of brutality on a massive scale and what it does to them, if you just read books about what slaughterhouse workers and factory farm workers go through, the violence, the spousal abuse, the drug addiction, the alcohol addiction, the misery in their lives. About 1 billion people are chronically malnourished and hungry. Another 1 billion people are chronically obese and overweight because they're gorging on grain-fed animals. And the massive devastation to the environment and the disconnectedness underlying that's been injected into us by our culture and by our religion, by every institution, because we don't want to look at this because it goes against our fundamental nature. So the underlying idea is to awaken to our natural compassion. And I think this is the great calling that we all have. This is the underlying benevolent transformation, benevolent revolution, benevolent evolution that our culture yearns for and longs for. And we can see right now, literally, it's on our plate. We now have 3 years and 4 months, thank you, to make the major changes. And I just want to invite all of us in this room and everyone who's listening to this or watching this at any time to go into our communities and spread this message. I was just at a retreat on my book, The World Peace Diet. 40 people went out, and they're now teaching the ideas in the World Peace Diet in their communities. We can do that with all modes and forms of vegan education. It's a grassroots movement. It's not going to be coming probably for a while to the mass media, but it can. But it will when we get strong enough. So keep spreading this wonderful message, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
What a fascinating conversation and discussion we're having. If only every human being on the planet could hear this discussion. And as we continue our discussion, Lionel Friedberg, do you have another question for Supreme Master regarding this issue of spirituality and evolution and how we need to regard other life as sacred if we are to survive?
I would like to get some feedback from you as to your audience. Are we actually getting this message through to people? And if so, how are we able to extend? I think Supreme Master Television is a wonderful institution, and I want to commend you from the depth of my heart for what you are doing. How can we get more of this into the world, into society? How can we reach more people? Is there anything that you can advise us on this?
Thank you, sir, for trusting me. We are doing just whatever we can, not just on television, but the people from the association, they're going out of their way, they're printing thousands, 100,000, millions of leaflets containing the information about global warming, SOS, and the alternative lifestyle of a vegan diet. And they go out, they put the flyers in their pocket, in their handbag, and they distribute it wherever they go, on the bus, on the train, in the restaurant. I even do it myself. Whenever I go out and when I see some appropriate situation, I would also hand out a leaflet about SOS and vegetarian diet. And also nowadays we have emails, we have internet. We do whatever we can. There's no other way that I can even suggest. What you are doing already is very wonderful. And what Dr. Turtle has been doing is wonderful. He wrote books. Some people wrote books. Some people go on TV. Some people go on radio. Some people write articles on the newspapers. Some people go out and distributing flyers. And some people gather information about vegetarian diet and the urgency of our planet, and they just give it to everyone that they can. And that's all we can do for now, so. Or else I think we can hire an airplane and go in the air and let all the flyers fly down everywhere. Oh, what else do you think we should do? Maybe you have a better idea. The government must involve. The media must involve. Because it should be official, the vegetarian diet. Vegetarian or vegan should be the norm in the society right now. Should be the official solution, the immediate solution, the immediate effect for our planet. The government, the media, should please help. Anyway, we could spread out whatever way we can, because if the government and the media doesn't join us, then we're a little bit short and maybe slow, but we do it. We do individually whatever we can. All the vegetarian, vegans, people out there, please just print any leaflet you can concerning urgency of the planet and the benefit of vegetarian diet in connection with saving the planet. Please do it. Please don't be shy anymore. It's time now. I know you don't want to boast about you are being vegetarian, but why not? This is a noble way of life.
Thank you, Supreme Master, for such appropriate advice.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I loved hearing Supreme Master, and as we listen to an amazing panel that we have here today and try to process all of this, it occurs to me that while we are here pushing for evolution and pushing for compassion and pushing for kindness, unfortunately, a lot of the country is being brainwashed by hamburger ads and being conditioned to eat more and more meat. And so I was hoping perhaps Supreme Master could share some of her experience and wisdom about how we get to change the media's outlook so that the mainstream media does promote healthy diet, given all we know about global warming and the impact of a high cholesterol diet on health. How do we make the mainstream media take a fair approach to this issue and not minimize it or ridicule it?
Yes, Jane, I was asking myself the same. But you see, somebody has informed me that the media are sometimes or oftentimes controlled by a big corporate company, and sometimes they are even mid-corporate. So we can go direct to these so-called bosses by approaching them personally, talking to them, or sending them email, giving them leaflets. We change from the root. And once the boss changed, maybe the employee changed. And I also do hope that the journalists, the reporters, the media agents do remember their noble job as informative agents for the people. That's why people buy newspapers. That's why people watch television, because in a daily life, everyone is so busy to earn a living. So they rely on the noble journalism to inform them what's going on the planet. They also rely on the government to do this job for them, to lead them into the right and beneficial direction. Well, just in case some people want to know about how precious our life is and how we are really treating this kind of precious life, I'm going to give you a very brief info. I think you know some of it already, and maybe some of you don't know. Some people out there don't know. So I'm going to inform you about the cost of meat diet in our lives. Apart from costing life, they are costing a lot of taxpayers' money. And I'm surprised that we are paying all that and no complaint. Hard-earned money just wasted down the drain. According to the University of Pennsylvania and Center of Disease Control and Prevention, and the Dr. Colin Campbell, or these three agents have told us that the cost of meat for health alone, to take care of the people who are sick because of meat, the cost of it in the United States alone is around 120 to 150 billion of dollars per year. Just for taking care of health-related, how we treat our life. Because we eat meat, we get sick, and then we have to work hard to pay tax, to go to the hospital and get dissected, get probed, and get injected. Okay, now the cost of cigarettes per year for taking care of health-related problem concerning cigarette alone in the United States is 96 billion. The cost of alcohol abuse for the United States alone is 186.4 billion, okay? Up to now, it's all billions. And the cost of drugs-related problem per year in the United States is 181 billion per year. And now the cost of war for a year in the United States right now is 192 billion per year. Add them all together. This is all your money. Down the drain it went. And all this is from the World Health Organization statement, from the White House statement about drug control policy, and from U.S. congressional research about arms control and non-proliferation. It's not for me. And the war cost is about weapons yet. It's nothing to do with even damage or rebuilding or helping the wounded personnel and soldiers and innocent civilians as well, etc., etc. So this is really too much. When we think of how we treasure our life, how we want to live long, how we want to be healthy, how we love life as is. Nobody really wants to die. Nobody really wants to get sick. But look at how we treat our life. We poison our system of the body by meat, by cigarette, by alcohol, by drug, and by war as well. This is not the way we should treat the precious life that we got. The more we say we love life, the more we should look at all these facts and turn around. I'm not talking about spiritual yet. This is only the cost of all the poisons that we've been taking into our precious temple of God, which is the body. I'm surprised. How can people don't think about it? All this talk about protecting life and protecting health and all the kind of preventive system to protect the health of the people, it comes to nothing if we continue to poison our bodies with meat, cigarette, alcohol, drug, and making war as well. Because all this money is a waste. We could have had better life for every citizen in the United States if all this spending money were given to them in a better education or helping the underprivileged, building a better school, getting better information for everybody, helping the disabled, helping the terminal ill children, spend it on research for medical treatment, etc., etc. And continue for this trend. One serving of beef, we use 1,200 gallons of clean, good water. One serving of chicken, 330 gallons of water, clean and good. And one complete vegan meal, including rice or bread, and tofu, that is full of protein, and vegetables. It costs only 98 gallons of water. Now we are complaining about shortage of water everywhere on the planet. We're complaining about shortage of food. We use 90% of grain to feed animals instead, and we leave 862 million people hungry. That is 2008 alone. For the grain that we use for livestock, we can feed 2 billion people, many times over for the war hunger people that we have right now. So I do not understand, truly, from all the intelligence that I have, would somebody explain to me what kind of world we are living in, and what kind of policy we are following, and what kind of kindness we're doing to ourselves and our fellow beings, not to talk about animals yet. Because we cannot even love our own species. So it would be incomprehensible, of course, for many to understand how to love animals. Now you know why. In Ohio alone, the climate change is going to cost that state $1 billion because the water bordering of their state, the lake, will be going down drastically due to climate change. And they will have to rebuild their harbors and infrastructure to meet the new level of water, new demand. So the climate change, it will cost more. And why? Because of meat diet. All we do is just forsake that piece of meat on our plate and replace it with protein from vegetable kingdom. We have food to eat. We have choices, and they are wonderful. They are nutritious. It's not like we don't have choice. We don't have to kill to live. We don't have to degrade ourselves into murderous agent of the planet. We can live and let live. The way it is right now, it seems like we will be working forever busy, just to pay tax. Because we earn the money, and then we have to pay tax so that we can have our sickness repaired, our body checked up, and that not even guarantee that we can live. That is the point. So much suffering, so much medicament, so much blood test and X-ray and operation and all that. All this doesn't even guarantee that our life will be saved due to the way we don't treat ourselves kindly, due to the way that we are taking poison for food. Meat is poison. Scientifically speaking, physically speaking. I am going to leave out the religious aside right now because, people will think I try to convert them. I don't want to convert anyone because the more I convert, the more I have to work on me, yeah? So it's good enough for me if people just go veg, do good deed. That's all I ask. Go vegetarian, do good deed. Yeah? Whatever good, you do it right away. Whatever bad, you stop.
Doing good right now, including saving the planet. That means go veg as well. So it's all boiled down to going vegan. Okay, if you cannot go vegan, please go vegetarian first. Because if we don't eat meat, even though we eat cheese, there will be much, much less stock raising.
And it will be much less killing on the planet. And it is the killing karmic retribution that contribute to the danger of our planet right now. But just scientifically speaking, meat eating contributes to 80% of global warming and pollution. So if we just throw that piece of meat out of our mind, then the planet will be saved and you will have a longer life. And mark my word, you will be much happier person. You will be less anxious, sleep better at night. You will have no sickness. If all the planet people go vegetarian, we will have no sickness, almost zero. Because the vegetarian people also get sick sometimes due to their immune system is still not completely recovered because they have not been vegetarian since child, most of them. And then other people who are not vegetarian get sick all the time and then transmit it also to the poor vegetarian people. But if all the people are vegetarian, nobody gets sick. So talking about our life is sacred. It begins with us. Let's begin with the human life. Let's treat us with all kindness and respect to the body that has been toiling day and night for us to enjoy all the pleasures that life has to offer. Let's begin the sacred life with us. Let's begin to treat our life more kindly by turning to nutritious food instead of poisonous food like meat, cigarette, alcohol, drugs. War will stop if we all turn vegetarian, in any case. The best is war stop, also before vegetarian. But if not, the war will stop. Because once we are vegetarian, we know why we are vegetarian. Our heart will be more compassionate, and it's automatically we don't want any war. So it's amazing, that we still can produce children and, do anything else in life for all the poison that we take into our life every day. But would anybody ever stop for a few moments to ponder themselves what kind of world we live in? Is this the kind of world that we want? That's it. That where we have to kill to live, or we have to murder lives in order to survive, or we have to even murder each other to survive. This is not truly the kind of life, the kind of world that we want to live in. We want a better world. We want more compassionate, loving world. So we have to turn around and work to build that world. It's a good thing that we should not be extravagant, yes, but extreme asceticism also very tiring for the mind, and the mind will rebel. Anyway, so we have to treat ourselves nicely, no extreme, because God has created all things for us to enjoy, yeah? Asceticism is not going to save our world, extravagant either. So God has created enough water for us, enough food for us, to last even forever. If we but know how to stop abusing the earth resource and her sustenance, we should not kill our fellow beings to satisfy our greed. And this is the main point of planetary problem right now. Our overly spending of our moral merit and world resource. All this changing bulbs and new car technology and sparing water, don't take a shower too long and don't turn on the tap water while you're cleaning your teeth. All this is fine, but they are just scratching the itch outside of the sock. It will not ease our itch. It only makes matter temporarily forgotten and cover the real problem and cover the real solution. It just distracts us from our real goal, real solution. Yes, and the planet will get worse if we just keep doing these scratching outside the sock things. Yeah, we have to scratch on the skin if we want to ease our itch. What I mean is, we have to address the main wound. That is the meat production. And everybody who has the chance to know and has the power to know should know by now that meat production is the main cause of global warming. And stop meat eating is the main solution to save the planet. I do not understand why we don't go there. If somebody with intelligence explain this to me, I will be very grateful if I have a good answer for that. Meanwhile, we just have to continue doing what we do because we need to save this planet to pass on to our grandchildren. If we live the way we do now, meat eating, drug, alcohol, and cigarette, all that, and killing each other, killing the animals, I don't know how we really can answer to our own conscience. I'm not talking about religious obligation, nothing at all. Yeah. Ever wonder what kind of example we want to offer to our children when they grow up? Yeah, from all the goodness, the well-mannered that we expect from them. Yeah. If we tell them to be frugal, or don't take shower too long, or even don't leave water running while brushing their teeth and all that. And even suppose we don't take bath anymore, even all of us. Suppose we don't brush our teeth anymore. Suppose we don't even drink water. How much water do we save? 30% more or less. What good will that do to us? When we just stop eating meat, then we have 70% plus water to use. You can take as long bath as you want. You can have 3-4 swimming pool in your house. Nobody will say anything. And you will never feel any guilty. You never done anything harm to the planet. Just leave that piece of meat out of your diet. Let peace begin on your table.
Thank you, Supreme Master Ching Hai, for such thought-provoking information.
Vegetarian or vegan should be the norm in the society right now, should be the official solution, the immediate solution, the immediate effect for our planet. The government, the media, should please help.